from studying ancient Kemet, you see that they embrace death. Annie in the film, like what you had just talked about, she embraced death. Our people, how do we start to build a more positive relationship and mindset when it comes towards transition and not be so afraid to die? I'm not saying be young crash outs, but not be so morbid, when it comes to thinking about transition into that next phase.
Yeah, well, see, it's what's poisonous is the subjective programming through like movies,
Right.
especially those who of us who grew up in the church, what Christians deem their savior is Jesus. The last image
Mm,
that you see of him is of a horrific death. It's physical, it's violent, it's bloody. So we have this conception of death as something that is painful, or something that is a place of no return. So for our people, we have to get deeper into just not only the mythology, but also to how our body naturally has what's the word that I'm looking for? A photovoltaic nature to it, meaning melanin has the capacity to take light and convert it into bioelectricity and filter that through as information. So our relationship to the sun is different. Our relationship to, every single frequency of light within the electromagnetic spectrum is different. So when we grasp that concept, we have to understand that we have the capacity to charge the physical body to a point where we can reach enough escape velocity. It's the idea of, you know, honestly, I think being more true to ourselves in our everyday situations. And I think when we begin to start telling ourselves the truth and being honest with ourselves, we literally become light as a feather. I think it's a lot of the music we're listening to, a lot of the living vicariously through other people that we're doing.
yeah.
It's the some of the foods that we're ingesting. A lot of that plays a part in, of course, our mental capacity, but it also dilutes a lot of our spiritual essence, which its purpose is to be light. So when you begin to unravel and begin to let go of certain vices, and cardinal ways, you feel light. You feel light as a feather, literally. So it's about, for me, and what I've been witnessing just in society is lessening on us looking outside of ourselves and
Right.
going more within.
Yes, sir.
Because they always talk about how the universe, of course, is within. So it's really, it's really that. And I've been getting, me personally, my girl, shout out to my lady, she been getting me really heavy into meditation. She's had a very powerful experience for years through meditation, but she did it so long that, she's literally mastered the art of no thought. But it's the capacity to go into meditation and, within a millisecond of no thought, you can be in a place of no thought for just a second, and you zip up out of here to another space of consciousness. And um it's hard for a lot of people to do, but see, again, when you're beginning to unravel yourself and, like I said, lose some of those vices that you have, you develop not only a level of discipline, but the brain rearranges itself via neuroplasticity. So you begin to sync both sides of the brain together. And when you're moving through your everyday affairs as a whole brain thinker, and you go, for example, into a place of meditation, it's a lot easier to get to a place of no thought, because again, the idea is to be light as a feather. So I think for our people, again, to lose the concept of fear when it comes to death is really just, like I said, being honest and truthful with yourself, and really beginning to engage with another level of um I would say perspective. And for me, I'm speaking literally from personal experience. This is literally me actually doing work and getting over a lot of vices for myself. Spending time, in nature, or listening to different types of music. It lessens the burden, and you begin to have a healthy detachment from, say, like family members who may not serve you well, or situations like that. But we make it a little too complicated. And I think even in spirituality or in consciousness, we think, being well studied is all we need to do, or reading a lot of books, or, doing a lot of lectures, or being on a lot of podcasts. We think that's doing the work, which, 50-50 it is. We're getting the word out, and, teaching the people, giving the science, the mathematics, and all of that. But at the end of the day, when you're, removed from the podcast, when you're removed from Instagram, when you're removed from the book, can you become the information that you're teaching? Because, like I've said, there's always a difference between learning the information and becoming the information. You see,
True.
so it's more or less about personal endeavors and everything that you're experiencing within your own affairs, and utilizing the information that you are taking in and doing the work. And that's quite literally what happens, um, when, like I said, you begin to be honest and truthful with yourself. So,
Indeed, bro. In the film, one common theme, it was music, the power of our music, the power of our people. I might butcher this term, but man, you broke this down before. Piezoelectric infrasound. You can break that down, and why is music so important for our people?
uh, sound is
Yep.
key. Sound I've talked about is a compression wave. It's what you
Mm-hmm.
call scientifically a longitudinal wave. So when you hear some of our people, we listen to music and the rhythm, and we say, "Oh, I can feel it in my bones." Our bones are crystal, so it resonates.
Yeah.
Sound resonates. There's a level of compression through sound when we listen to music that pushes or presses on the bones, which are, like you said, piezoelectric, which generates a charge in the body. Naturally, as a people, we're clocked to the cosmic law. So, you know, through listening to music, there's a natural dance that we embody, and that's a specific rhythm. Like Michael Jackson, when he dances, that's a specific language that he's speaking.
Yeah.
Certain doors that he's unlocking through the language of dance. And we have to understand too that even on the other side, when you're dealing with death, or when you're dealing with just a level of transformation outside of the physical reality, there is no English, there is no language. So the only way, or not even the only way, but one of the most powerful ways to communicate to the other side is through dance, because when you're dancing, there's a level of sacred geometry that's involved. There's a level of sound that's involved. There's angles that are involved, which are important. There's tones that are involved. Usually, when you dance, there's sweating involved. Sometimes there's crying
Mm-hmm.
involved. Sometimes there's chanting involved. A lot of people go into a trance when they dance. Michael Jackson would say, him being such an introvert, performing in front of 50,000 people at a time, you have an overwhelming feeling of fear and love simultaneously, which almost puts the body in a form of a trance. So when he finally gets off the stage after a 2 or 3 hour performance, he only remembers maybe 30 minutes of the performance,
Wow.
because
Yeah.
he allows the music to take him over. You
Mm-hmm.
see, so I want our people to understand that too. When you have fear, and when you have doubt, and when you have, a level of um I wouldn't say confusion, but let's just say when our people have a level of fear and doubt, it's equivalent to just, like somebody who is has stage fright.
Yep.
Before they get on the stage, it's the bubble guts, it's the nervousness. Those feelings are very powerful because they literally transform you. They allow you to go into a flow state. So when you embody nervousness, when you embody fear, that's just the universe opening up the door to you to allow you to transform into something outside of your physical self. So you can tap into this archetypal energy and exist in this flow state, which is unseen, which allows you to go into a state of trance. So this is why, a lot of our dancers, when they do dance and perform in front of people, they go into the space of a trance. Um, so again, dancing is a way to communicate to the unseen. And also too, I spoke about this before, is that, the Dogons, you in the Dogons were even in the movie, you seen them doing a
Mm-hmm.
dance.
Yep.
The Dogons understood, again, another form of language, which is dancing. So every day, or not every day, but every couple of decades, when they were bear witness to Sirius, the dancing was a specific frequency. And of course, they denoted the water deity Denomo. So when they seen Sirius, they knew that dancing was going to create something literally in the heavens. So Sirius was always in conjunction with the sun. And so when you have solar flares going off, understanding that they knew when they seen Sirius, there was activity with the sun. Solar flares were actually electrifying the ionosphere. And what's
Mm.
happening is when you're electrifying the ionosphere via the solar flares, you develop what you call a Z pinch, like the letter Z, a Z pinch. So you have an electrical current from the solar flare, um, an electrical current from the solar flare going through the ionosphere, which develops a magnetic field. That magnetic field pinches down on the ionosphere, which then sends ions to the people on the ground that are dancing. So this is the activity they will get into because they understood magnetism and their own personal magnetic field. So we're in there when they're in a high state and they're dancing and their magnetic field is spinning faster and faster, they're allowing these ions to come in and embed, literally embed into their magnetic fields, which is called constructive wave interference. So coming out of then the trance or the dance, they now have, epiphanies, new ideas, because these are all cosmic principles and information coming from Sirius. So, that was one instance of why our ancestors performed dancing during these ritualistic ceremonies.
Brother, you were cooking, man. Magnetism, right? I thought about Remick instantly. He was magnetized to Sammy, to that energy, to his music, his spirit, his vibe, even Annie as well. Why do you think that when it comes towards white supremacy, white culture, I thought about our artists from the 60s who will be taken advantage of, 70s, 80s, hip hop artists, even now till this day. Typically, you see black artists performing, but up top, it's a white person that's collecting all the checks. They own the publishing, all of that, and they're still winning and being magnetized to our vibe, our energy, our spirit. Why do you think that white people are so magnetized when it comes towards us? They could be doing anything, but it's like when it comes to sports, when it comes to music, entertainment, you always see a white manager, you always see a white owner. Why are they always pulled and gravitated towards us?
Yeah. um, as we all say, we're the movers and shakers of society.
Hmm.
It's interesting because all of these Europeans come from a more esoteric perspective, unbeknownst to some of the artists. They're tapping into the metaphysics. They're tapping into the occult sciences. They're understanding certain rituals. They know when to drop certain people's albums. They study these artists' zodiac signs. They understand their vices. They understand their strengths. So they do a whole study on these individuals that they're melanated individuals that they're owning. Um, and the huge reason to that is because, again, they're into more of the cosmological perspective of things because they understand stars dictate how we move, and that how we adhere to our everyday life. So when you denote, for example, somebody like Chris Brown or Drake or Kendrick as stars, we call them celebrities, but they're stars. That's because they influence people. So when you can control a star, um, you can influence and condition the minds of the people. Uh, Melanin itself lacks a certain level of entropy, meaning melanin is just evidence of all the light within the electromagnetic spectrum folding in on itself, deeming it melanated or what we call black, or but it's not releasing a lot of what you call entropy, which is radiation. So when you can milk a melanated body to do what you want it to do, you lose a lot of the spiritual technology or essence of that person to then begin to create entropy, which then radiates outward. And whatever you've conditioned that artist to do, based on whether it's a low vibrational form of music, a low vibrational form of video, a low vibrational form of whatever they're presenting or selling, that level of entropy or radiation influences us, and then and thus we adhere to it. So I just feel like our people just understand how deep we are as a people, uh, in our technology is. And when you study again the music that we were involved in, when you study the arts that we were into, that was a form of redemption for us because we were communicating outside of the physical reality. It was a form of demonstration to allow us to physically experience something that we can't see. And see, for Europeans, they have to bear witness to something physical in order to know it exists, because they don't have the sensitivity to be able to process light or feeling and thus have a level of empathy. We as a people have empathy naturally. We have compassion.
Yeah.
And I've always said compassion is our compass that allows us to guide ourselves in the right direction through passion. You know, so if our hearts are creating our compass, which is our magnetic field, and we're heart centered, then we're never swaying too left or too right. We're always in the center. So for the European who can't physically demonstrate a level of empathy, they have to hijack the mind of the gods and use
Wow.
their magnetic field in order to control the masses. So that way, through a lower vibrational of again form of music or dance, we as consumers adhere to it, and then we follow by that same step. So it's all based on just the fact that they understand that, like I said, um, our people are the highest form of technology on this planet. Uh,
Mm.
and that's the reason why you always see a white person behind, black artists.
Indeed, bro. To your point, Black people, we are so welcoming, loving, inviting, sometimes to our own detriment. In the film, it shows that too. Us have to be careful about who we invite in. For our people right now during this time that's so pivotal, how can we still be compassionate, but also more grounded when it comes towards who we allow in? How do we still maintain being loving, compassionate, but also having a little bit more boundaries, I guess you could say, as a collective?
Yeah, well, see, love is transforming. Like love is dark.
Hmm.
It's not benevolent. Even the universe is not a respecter of man. The energy you put out, you get back. It doesn't matter who programs it or not. Um, so the idea is to always be balanced. But our people, we lack a lot of courage to stand up for ourselves.
Mm.
Courage is the number one key. See, because the ancestors won't give you a higher assignment until you can first um, get through the first lesson, which is courage. You see? So I'll even go as far as to say that's why even in Rome, back in the early 1800s and in Washington, D.C., they denoted their specific star to Regulus, which is a star in Leo. And Leo, of course, is the lion that deals with courage. But Regulus means little warrior. You see, so when they were aligning their, monuments and things of that nature to certain star systems, Rome relegated or denoted their specific system to Regulus. So that way they can tap into that archetypal energy. But us as a people, again, we naturally have this. So it's a level of discernment that we got to develop for ourselves. And like I said at the beginning of the build, this all comes by way of just unraveling yourself. So when you feel light as a feather, when you've gotten over certain vices, when you got over certain cardinal ways, um, you begin to develop a stronger level of discernment because your heart is centered. And like I said, your heart is what develops your magnetic field, which is your compass, which doesn't allow you to sway too far to the left or too far to the right. So it's always just about having a pure heart. But having a pure heart, by default, you would develop a level of courage because then you will have the capacity to not only discern, but choose self first before others. Because of course, like they always say, you can't love somebody outside of you until you love yourself first. You see.
So, hey, bro, hey, that's good talk, man. In the film, again, it was so many things just to break down. Like, I had to see it 3 times, bro, because each
Right,
time you could just catch something different. And
right,
from the first time I saw Sammy, instantly I thought about Robert Johnson, 27 Club, allegedly sold his soul at the Crossroads. blues singer, Mississippi, same roots, whole lot of parallels there. But I'm like, man, why does Satan always show up when it comes towards black artists? In the film too, I think it was Smoke. He told Sammy, bro, do not do this music stuff anymore because he said, I've never seen a happy musician. And that really stuck with me because I'm like, man, that's kind of deep.
Mm,
Even with Michael, with Prince, with Whitney, we can keep going. Nat King Cole, like all these people were so unhappy, but they had the world at their hands. Why does Satan always reveal himself, if you will, when it comes towards black artists? Because people always say, "Oh, he sold his soul," or you'll hear artists saying, "Hey, Satan tried to sell my soul." Why does he always show up when it comes with black artists?
it's a good question.
And
It's equivalent to in the movie Samuel when he played the blues and he was able to pull the vampire energy to him through his talent and through his art. And they wanted him
yep,
specifically. They
yep,
wanted him. These vampires knew that they were trapped in the physical reality, and so they had to create a heaven on earth, which is what you see
mhm,
a lot in the industry. A lot of people sell their soul, quote unquote, for the material objects, because you seen at the end when you seen Stack and his girl pull up, and they had the whole New York
yep.
aesthetic and everything,
Had the Coogi sweater, yeah,
just better and everything.
yep.
Shorty had the bamboo earrings, so they had the whole New York vibe, but it goes to show that, even when they had gained a level of fame and materialism, they were still vampires at the end of the day. So it's interesting because, like you said, the devil tends to show up, when we shine a light, and it's because of the fact that uh, the music itself, like I said, is our escape out of here. Um, More specifically, like jazz music. And we can speak on that here in a second.
Mhm.
But when the opportunity comes, and you develop your passion in music to a high level, there's always a level of polarity that happens. Referencing the, seven hermetic laws, which is the one of the laws being the law of polarity. So when you reach a certain level, you're going to be tested, and that's just in everyday life. It always seems like when you're on the up and up and everything is going well, things tend to hit a drastic turn just out of nowhere, and that's just a test. So a lot of our people in the music industry fail that because they haven't lightened themselves up. They haven't become light in the feather because they're still battling certain vices. So when you introduce to these talented individuals who have the technology to know how to physically escape this reality um, by utilizing music, and you begin to see these people um, really demonstrate this at a high level, the vampires are going to come out because again, they're trapped here. So they have to hijack those individuals. And because they know those individuals may still have certain vices that they're battling, they can give them, riches and money and materialism, and they're going to gravitate to it because they haven't dealt with certain things within themselves. So it's just again like a a test that our people always constantly have to experience because we as a people naturally are passionate. So our skill set is very high, but we also are attracted to materialism, which is a lot what a lot of those vampires are well aware of. So we validate ourselves through clothes. We validate ourselves through shoes. We validate ourselves through cars, through jewelry. And that's naturally genetically inherently within us. Like we adorn ourselves with royalty. That's just where we come from, But what these vampires understand this concept, but also understand that our people are sick to a certain extent. Once you begin to be able to see, that diamond in the rough that has that allure and that passion and that skill set for music, you gravitate to them, just like the vampire did to a Samuel.
Yeah.
So when you gravitate to him, and he hasn't, like I said, overcome certain vices and things of that nature, and you introduce money to him, you put him at a high level, but even with Michael Jackson, like we said, at a high level, you are still being compromised because this is now getting into, obligations and oaths and contracts that you've now signed that you have to fulfill. So they'll grant you and give you the opportunity to experience 20 or 30 or 40,000 people, in front of you that you're singing to. But on the flip side, because you have certain obligations and oath that you've obliged to, you're going to be compromised. So again, that's a level of polarity that our people, experience. And I feel like, again, when that diamond in the rough shines, just be aware that there is going to be vampiric energy that appears, because that's universal law. Like I said, the universe isn't a respecter of man. It's the energy you put out, you get back. But the energy you get back is not only going to be good, but it's going to be just as equivalent as quote unquote negative as well. So you just have to have the level of discernment and, continue to move, like I said, in a pure heart. And once you do that, you don't sway too far to the left or too far to the right. You stay true to yourself.